Delighted to introduce our speaker today. I just learned that Jared Arnett is also a Rotarian, so he's a fellow member. He is the Executive Director of SOAR, or Shaping Our Appalachian Region. For those of you who may not be familiar with this organization, it's a bipartisan effort led by 5th District Kentucky Republican Congressman Hal Rogers, and Democratic Governor Steve Beshear. And the purpose is to establish a common commitment and create a new vision for the 54 Appalachian regional counties. Jared is a native of Eastern Kentucky and a founding executive director of SOAR. Previously, he served as president and CEO of the Southeast Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, Director of Finance of Soundhouse Music, he is a jazz pianist at heart, and a management consultant for the East Kentucky Small Business Development Center. At the ripe age of 26, he started his own consulting firm and was instrumental in more than 10 successful startups in Eastern Kentucky, including his most recent Mountain Music Exchange. Both Congressman Rogers and Governor Beshear cite Jared's passion for the future of Eastern Kentucky, as well as his energy, vision, and entrepreneurial business skills as key factors when they tapped him for this important position. Jared holds a bachelor's degree and MBA from Morehead State University, and Carl Schmidt's out there somewhere, who also a Morehead grad. Jared lives in Floyd County in Harold, Kentucky, with his wife Bethany and 4-year-old daughter Roz. Please join me in welcoming Jared to Rotary.
It's amazing how great you can sound when you write your own bio. It's an honor to be here, and that was a lot of information. And somebody's mentioned already about how young I look while we were sitting here. And so I want to tell you a quick story. Leadership Kentucky was at Breaks Interstate Park, which is on the Virginia-Kentucky line. For one of their meetings, they asked me as president of the chamber to come give an update. So I came and talked about Eastern Kentucky and Appalachia and economic development, all that we were doing. I thought it was a real engaging discussion. I hadn't had any questions. I opened it up for questions. There was a lady in the back of the room, and she raised her hand. I thought, this is going to be a good question. And I called on her, and she said, how old are you? And that's what she was concerned about. But it's an honor to be here today to talk about SOAR. In 1963, there was a guy named John Wisman, who was from Powell County, or Mount Sterling area. He had been president of the Junior Kentucky Chamber of Commerce and was a businessman from the region. And he decided something needed to be done different in the rural and Appalachian part of Kentucky. And he began working to that end and creating plans, and eventually got the attention of Governor Burt Combs at the time. Long story short, they gathered a council of governors of about 13 states and started lobbying the federal government. Finally, they got the White House's attention, and they got a note from the chief of staff that said, come up, President Kennedy wants to meet with you, with his cabinet, and talk about the Appalachian part of the United States. 5 governors went up to that meeting. They were sitting, and President Kennedy was late to the meeting, and the current Secretary of Agriculture, Orville Freeman was his name, was talking about the need for regional planning in the Appalachia part of the United States of America, and how desperately it was needed. President Kennedy came in late and interrupted the secretary and gave his thoughts on the matter. He sat down at the table and got out a scrap piece of paper and scribbled something on it, folded it up like a paper airplane, and threw it at Governor Combs. And Governor Combs unfolded it, and it said, Burt, what do you really want? This gave Governor Burt Combs the confidence at that meeting before he stood up to tell them what they really needed. And what he stood up and said was essentially, there's no way I, as a governor, my staff in Kentucky, can come to 6 different agencies in Washington, D.C. and look for help for this part of the region. We need a concentrated effort. Out of that one meeting, a year later, Congress passed a bill that created the Appalachia Regional Commission. The ARC, you may know that acronym, you may have heard of it before. It serves 13 states. They celebrated their 50th year this year. They've invested a tremendous amount of money in the Appalachian region. So that brings me to today. That was 50 years ago. And when I got this position, the first thing I did, I actually went to UK and dug out John Wistman's notes and his committee meetings and the planning that they were doing then. I'm thinking, this sounds eerily familiar, right? We need planning, we need investment. So I wanted to read what was happening then and understand it, so we know what we're doing today, so we don't replicate it. So I dug that out. So what's the problem? What got Governor Beshear and Congressman Rogers together in the first place? And I'm going to be real brief about this because we've all heard enough about it. But this is just the trajectory of coal mine employment in Kentucky since 1925 through 2013. You can see in 1945 we had over 70,000 miners in the state, about 65,000 in eastern Kentucky. That number today is, the number in eastern Kentucky is roughly 6,000. So it's been a pretty steady, there's been bumps in the economy, and this is not a talk about coal. I could talk about that for a long time. But what really drove it was this right here at the end. When you look at the big picture, that's not that big of a deal, but this was a 50% drop in about 2 years. So we went from 15,000, our core industry employees within the region, to about 7,500 in 2 years. This was just the coal miners. It didn't count the coal truck drivers, the mineral labs, the engineers, all the other support industry that was affected. The governor and congressman realized this. They found it was time to do something different. But this real quick, that's a pile of money. So we did the numbers. What's that mean? What's that mean to our region? What's that mean to Kentucky? For our region, that's one of the few things that we export out and bring outside money into the region that helps boost our economy. So we did the numbers on the coal miners plus 2 support jobs for each one of those. Roughly $1 billion in payroll alone out of the region's economy, but also the state's economy. It impacts us all. But the big picture is, this is a map of all 13 states in the territory that ARC serves. Unfortunately, Kentucky has become known as the red dot. These red counties are the distressed counties. These are measured on 3 metrics: unemployment rate, poverty rate, and this is per capita market income rate. So it pulls out any transfer payments, what are people within these counties and communities earning. You see, this is not just eastern Kentucky. This is a big chunk. It's 54 counties of Kentucky. You can say 54, or you can say pretty much half the state is what we're looking at working with. My job is simple. It's really complex, but it's really simple. Our organization is just trying to change from dark red to light red to white. It's really difficult to do because it's measured by a county. But it's really hard to have 54 plans on how we're going to grow each county. So SOAR is about thinking above that, thinking bigger than that, and bringing many different partners to the table to do it. That's a little closer view of Kentucky. You can see that there's really started to grow on their own a couple little regional economies under that. You see Pike County and Pikeville has started to make progress. Somerset and London have started to make progress. Of course, Winchester, Richmond, and up in the Ashland area and the Moorhead area. So there's certain regional hubs that have kind of popped up as an economy. And if we think about it that way, it's much easier to tackle 6 or 7 regional economies and make plans for those rather than thinking we've got to do something massive in all 54 counties. So what's the vision? How is SOAR different? This is the actual vision that the board passed. In Appalachia, Kentucky, engaged in a landscape-changing enterprise shaped by a shared and envisioned future driven by innovation, entrepreneurship, and a commitment to common purpose. It's a lot of words. with improved education, health, and economic outcomes, and expanding opportunities for all our region's citizens. For me, it sums up to this: change driven by innovation. Things have got to be different. And it's got to be innovative. We've got to think outside the box. We can't think inside the same walls we've always thought in. All ideas have to be on the table, and we've got to be willing to listen and make plans accordingly. Anytime you're going to implement change, you've got to have a team to do it. All great innovations have been driven by a team of people working on it. That's what we've been doing for the last year, essentially. Started with these two, how you start a movement, you get two people at the top that did something completely outside the box. They both stepped outside of their political comfort zones, took pretty big risks. Congressman Rogers, longtime Republican congressman from our district, stood on the stage at the first SOAR summit, which I've got a picture of, with Governor Beshear, and said, listen, coal is always going to be important. It's going to be a part of the economy, but it's never going to be the same. For him to stand up and say that changed everything. If SOAR went away today and my job was gone, I could promise you SOAR has made a difference because it opened up the debate and the dialogue about the future of the region, and it made it okay to talk about it. Before, you were either pro-coal or anti-coal, and now we can be pro-Appalachian region, whatever is best. They planned the first summit, 1,500 people showed up. They thought maybe 200, then it got to 400, then it got to 600, then it got to 1,000, and made it to 1,500 people. This was in Pikeville, December 9th, 2013. It was a snowy day, terrible day. Several federal officials were planning on to make it. Their flights got canceled. They drove down in a van, watching it on their phones because KT streamed it. They got there that night, and we had breakfast with several of them the next morning. I was president of the chamber at the time. I sat on a panel that day on business improvement and economic development. The day before that, I wrote an op-ed for the Lexington Herald that was titled, "Long-Term Economic Strategies Must Trump Local Politics." I think that's what it said. It started out with this idea that we in Eastern Kentucky can no longer proactively wait for the phone to ring. Because that seemed to be, as I came up and started getting involved in economic development, going to these state associations and the national conferences, and I seen what everybody else was doing. I was coming back to the region, and you just kind of look around and say, who's doing economic development? And we were very reactive. We were waiting for the state. We were waiting for the next project to call us and say, we want to be there. But nobody was out in the trenches digging and selling our region. And nobody had been focused on developing product to sell. I could talk a lot about that information, but I won't get off track too much. So May 11, 2015, I was hired in November 1st. That was my first day. And originally the summit was planned for February. And again, that Sunday morning before the summit, we got a forecast of 12 to 15 inches of snow the next day, with 1,300 people registered. That was a stressful day. But we made the decision about noon on Sunday to cancel that first summit, which was a great decision because we did get about 18 inches of snow. The entire city of Pikeville was shut down. So we postponed it. We ended up having it in May. Over 1,300 people attended again. This is the opening session with myself, the governor, Congressman Bill Goodman from KET. Again, federal officials, we had the Deputy Secretary for the Cabinet for the Department of Commerce. We had the Secretary of Labor, Secretary Perez was there that day. The federal co-chair from the ARC, Earl Gold, was there that day. This bipartisan partnership has got the attention of the federal government. The exciting thing is, I'm going to step off the stage just for a second. Can you reach me that book right there? So after the first summit, we launched what they called working groups. Each of these 10 different sectors here, there was somebody appointed to chair a working group based on each one of these topics. I was nominated and appointed to chair the Business Incubation or Entrepreneurship Working Group. We spent all summer doing listening sessions throughout the entire region, getting ideas, priorities, what do we need to change, what needs to be changed. 2,500 people attended those and gave input, which resulted in this, a plan that oftentimes ends up on a desk or in a shelf. And it's a big plan. My first day, November 1st, my first board meeting was November 24th. They said, just filter that down into like 5 priorities that we can vote on at the board meeting in 3 weeks. And I was like, okay. So we worked on that. But what's really happened is this is not a plan for SOAR. It's 10 different plans based on those 10 different sectors. It's a plan for the region. And so what happened is all the different organizations that are involved in any of these sectors, they started pulling out those reports. They started applying for grants that were aligned with the priorities and recommendations that were here. SOAR's not going to do all this work. We're a convener, we're a facilitator, we're bringing partners together to get things done. The federal government, United States Department of Agriculture, Appalachian Regional Commission, the States Department of Local Government, are using this plan as a guide for investment. So when I say the IRC's invested a tremendous amount of money, obviously something has not worked perfectly because we got a lot of red counties still. And for me, I think it was a strategy that was missing, that was owned by the entire region, that everybody was engaged and involved in. And I think we're making great headway to that end. So May, we had 1,300 again. Corporate partners, we are funded in part by the Appalachian Regional Commission and some funding by the Kentucky, the Commonwealth of Kentucky. But we brought on corporate partners. Coming from private industry and business world in the chamber, I understand how important it is to have corporate partners and people who can make a difference, can make investments, can make decisions, and create jobs. Because that's really what SOAR is about. A lot of these other ills around community health and all these other things in our region can be solved if we create economic opportunity. And that's, at the end of the day, that's the goal. These are the partners that can help us do it. These are 3 presenting partners that we have: University of Kentucky, University of Louisville, Pikeville Medical Center. Founding partners, Aetna, Baptist Health Group Energy. By the way, these 3 are in at $100,000 a year for 3 years. These 7 are in for $50,000 a year for 3 years. These are in for $25,000 a year for 3 years. The board meeting before I was hired, the treasurer's report took about 10 seconds. They said, we've got $5,000, but we spent it all. So when I started to consider taking this position, it was a pretty big decision for me. It wasn't something I jumped at immediately and thought, this is a great opportunity to fall on my face. In our office, we have 3 staff members. I'm the executive director. We have Kevin Louts, Director of Strategic Partnerships. We believe the only way to solve the complex problems are through strategic partnerships. We have Diane Combs, our executive assistant. We will be getting 2 vistas. I don't know if you're familiar with that program or not, but it's an AmeriCorps program where we get a year commitment from 2 different people that are going to work in the office. We just have to provide office space. The CDC will be sending a staff member to assist in community health planning and action items around community health throughout the entire region. We've created action teams. Fiber to the premise, we all know the broadband announcement that impacts the entire state. It's going to impact Louisville. It happened because of the partnership between Congressman Rogers and Governor Beshear. Congressman Rogers was able to identify about $20 million in federal money to partner with the state's $30 million in bonds, create this public-private partnership, require capital. It's going to be a $250 million project. We just got the most recent rankings. Kentucky is 50th in broadband access and availability. It's 50 out of 50. It's not good. This is going to change that. This is going to move us towards the front and create tremendous opportunity. But we've got to do fiber to the premise. It's got to be to homes and businesses. It can't just be a middle mile, which is this first project, which is a piece of the puzzle. Tech hire, it's about retraining our workforce in the region beyond just thinking, well, what's the demand for workforce here in Appalachia, to what's the demand for workforce globally. And with broadband and technology, this is a totally different game. We've got to be thinking, we can't be thinking flower shops and barber shops. We've got to be thinking innovative businesses that do business globally, they can do from anywhere in the world, and how we spawn that type of culture and environment. Business services, we are working to form a group called an E-team that's going to identify 10 businesses within the region that have the capacity to grow through export or e-commerce. We have so many different technical assistance providers, capital availability for small businesses. But again, we've been very reactive. So we're going to pick 10 businesses who apply. We're going to wrap resources around those, kind of like a glorified accelerator or incubator, and try to grow those businesses and create some homegrown jobs. Community health will be one of the action teams, and then sites and buildings. Through this process, we found we were critically unable to respond to requests for sites and buildings and economic development projects. Data was not readily available. There was somebody who had a building. Let's call them and see does it have water? Yeah, it's got water, but how much? Sometimes it was a 3 and 4 month process to gather information. We got a team on working to fix that. So a staff of 3, I say this without hesitation, it's a team of thousands of people. You can't read those, but that's all the different groups who volunteered at the last summit, who are involved in a working session, or have been involved in the advisory council. In some way or some level, these people have participated, and many times it's been multiple staff members from those organizations. Inspiring action, these are just a few. I could have pages of different announcements that have happened because of SOAR, action that other people have taken that are in line with SOAR strategy. We had BitSource. This is an innovative company owned by 2 former coal operators and engineers. We took them to visit Awesome Inc. in Lexington, and they said, we could do something like this. So they created BitSource. It's a computer coding company. They decided they were going to hire 8 laid-off coal miners and retrain them to do computer code. Guess how many people applied? Almost 1,000. They put them through skills tests and identified who's got the right skill sets and talents that make sense with computer coding. They hired 8. They've started the training program. They're working on getting contracts for people throughout the state and country to do computer coding from Pikeville, Kentucky. Kentucky Housing Corporation, they saw the need for housing. They just announced a 1% financing mortgage, 30-year mortgage for certain eligible participants within the region. KCTCS, Dr. Box, the new president of KCTCS, very involved in what we're doing. Talk to him every couple of weeks. He called a meeting with the 5 presidents of the community college systems in the Appalachian region. We all got together and talked about how do we work this together for SOAR? How do we create an economy and line up workforce training at the same time? Because that's really what we're doing. They're totally on board. They're shifting what they're doing toward entrepreneurship, innovation, technology. Things are starting to turn. Small business network link. We realized we needed a link for entrepreneurs, a place for them to get together. Southeast Kentucky Economic Development Corporation got a grant. They're doing that. East Kentucky Power Co-op just launched the STEM initiative they're paying with partnership with, again, the governor and congressman to get 64 board certified teachers within the region, and then to implement Project Lead the Way in 60 or 70 different school systems. I mean, this is major overhaul. This is major work that's being done, and I'm just kind of sitting in the middle of it. And it's just happening all around us, and people see what the movement, the positive movement, and they see the hope, and they're just wanting to be a part of it, and they're getting involved in doing it. A new organization called One East Kentucky to serve about 9 counties within the region who had nobody to do economic development for them. They didn't have a champion for economic development. Nobody was selling their industrial parks. Nobody was working with existing industry. and doing retention and expansion work. That organization is launched. The Promise Zone was launched. Small Farm. I mean, I could go on and on. Broadband, Kentucky Appalachian Regional Development Fund. We used to dream of a day when the coal severance was invested strategically based on a plan in our region. I thought it would never happen. At a time when it's dropped a third, it used to be $300 million a year in revenue for the state. At this point, it's about $200 million a year in revenue. It's a complicated formula. I don't have time to get into it. 50% of it goes to the state budget. The other 50% gets sliced and diced a half a dozen different ways. It ends up back in the region from which it came. We wanted a regional development fund that you can invest that money in projects that created jobs and tore down barriers to economic growth. Last year in the general session, we crafted a bill, Senate Bill 168, created just that, a Kentucky Appalachian Regional Development Fund that the state could put coal severance into. The application process would then go through SOAR, and it would be recommended to the Department of Local Government on what projects to fund. My dream is, it takes politics out of it. That's a big dream. That's lofty. Pretty lofty. But I think it has to happen to make a difference. 0 no votes. I presented in the House and the Senate to committee. 0 no votes, both floors, 0 no votes. It might help that President Stivers and Speaker Stumbo are on our executive board and both from the region. Congressman Rogers is chairman of the Federal Appropriations Committee. If you understand the statement, the stars are aligned. It is a good time to change this state and this region. And important things are happening. The change it takes, a different vision, strategic investment, a change in attitude, a change in unity, and change in trust. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. So that's what I believe in from an organizational standpoint, and we're building our organization, our culture, and our office around that idea that we're going to be adaptable to change, and we've got to be the driving force for change in the region. It'll be a story of leadership of those two guys. At the end of the day, they're the two that started all this. First time I met Congressman Rogers, I was 11 years old. He was doing a groundbreaking on a water project that meant my family, I was raised in the head of a holler in McGoffin County. We were getting city water. That was a big deal. We could do more than one load of laundry a day. My mother took me to the groundbreaking where he was there. Had no idea what ARC or USDA or all these acronyms meant. All I knew, man, we're getting city water. It's the first time I met him, and it's just it's been a crazy ride for me personally. The vision has entrepreneur in it. It's about innovation. So what is an entrepreneur? And this is just my definition. I know I'm getting close to time, and I'm almost finished. I think about, I had the chance to sit on a panel to judge some business plan competitions that Dr. Pierce Lyons and Alltech was hosting. And he told his story about when he was trying to start his company. He kept going to banks, trying to borrow $10,000. And they kept telling him no and telling him no. And I started thinking about that, and that bank that said no, they never kept the opportunity they missed there on their books as a loss. Does that make sense? It was a pretty big risk for them to tell. It was a bigger risk for them to tell him no than to tell him yes. So I started thinking about that, and when we're faced with opportunity, when our region was faced with opportunity, when I was faced with making a decision whether to take this job or not or start a business, most of the time you hear an entrepreneur say, I would rather accept the risk of losing it all than wonder what if. And for me, that's what it's about, is an entrepreneur will not accept the risk of doing nothing. And that's what our organization is about. It's not about waiting to see what the future of the region is going to be. It's going to be saying, here's where we're going to be in 10 years. Let's proactively get the team together and get us there. But we're not going to accept the risk of doing nothing. It's a different way of thinking. And the thing that keeps me charged up the most is probably a story from when I was at the chamber. I spoke at a fiscal court meeting and was trying to change some things, as you might imagine, on behalf of the chamber. It was a rough meeting, and it's one of those days I just want to go run my business again. Is this really worth it? Stopped at Walmart a couple days later, was going through the line, and the cashier was checking me out. It was a lady maybe in her 60s. She just kept looking at me and smiling. This smile right here. I started feeling real awkward, and I said, hello. She said, saw you on TV. I said, you did? She said, yeah. Had no idea what I was doing, but she said this. She said, keep fighting for us. Had no idea who she was. The 7,000 miners, it's families. It's real. And we've got a big job at hand. But if I can give, with anything I do, a little bit of hope that they see we're going to make a difference and change things, then that's what I'm here to do. It keeps me fine. So I thank you for hosting me here today.
But we will have the mics open for questions for Jared. Any questions for him? I'm way in the back.
Yes, I'm Michael Fetter. I want to congratulate you for doing what you've done. Because not only off the ground, but ready to soar, is what it sounds like. But we really want to know is, how old are you
I'm 32. 32.
We knew that was going to happen. I knew someone was going to ask that. I was going to ask that. If not, do we have any questions? If not, Jared, thank you so much for